Hey, what's happening, guys? Pete here with MixBetterNow.com and LearningToMix.com. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to be checking out my top 10 must-have plugins for mixing drums.
What's up? This is Steven Slate. You are watching Mix Better Now.
All right, so just one thing I want to touch on before we get going here is that these are just all my opinions, of course. If you guys have, a different opinion or something else that you cannot live without when mixing drums, throw it in the comment section below. All right, so the first plugin up here is going to be Seventh Heaven Professional Reverb from my friends over at Liquid Sonics. This is an amazing reverb plugin. I think it's really important to have a go-to reverb on some drums, and this one has absolutely everything in it. If we do a little drop down here, you're going to see we have quite a number of different types of reverbs. We've got ambience, chambers, halls, nonlinear verb, plates, rooms, spaces, all kinds of good stuff. This is actually based off of the Bricasti M7, so it's going to have that type of quality of sound inside it. We've got other great things like a master EQ section, which for me is very important to be able to EQ and compress my effects if I choose to do so. We also have some advanced controls down here that we could sort of dig deep into. I have this set up as a just sort of a room, a studio room, and I'm setting the kick and the snare here to just a little bit of verb. So again, for me, bang for the buck, the amount of diversity out of this. Seventh Heaven Professional from Liquid Sonics gets it done. All right, now getting into the fun stuff here. Coming in at number 2, we have the Destresser from UAD and Empirical Labs. Now look, for this one in particular, I happen to have this Destresser. I have the Empirical Labs Arouser, which is fantastic. The Slate Digital FG Stress, which is great. So, look, whatever you have, by all means, use it. But I love a Destresser on drums. I find it to be usable on just about all the drums that you're gonna, want to compress. Kick drum, snare drum, it's great on toms, it's great on. I have it on the drum bus here. I also love using it in parallel with all the different features on it. You can really get a nice drum crush going. Let's take a quick look at this on the drum bus. So you really can't beat what a Destresser gives you in terms of sonic quality and diversity. All right, staying in compressor land, I have chosen to go with the 1176. Again, there's a ton of different companies that make an iteration of this. I really like the Reverb Blue Stripe from UAD on drums in particular. I think it sounds awesome. Again, this is something I will often reach for on my drum bus or I will use in parallel. Here I have it set up on my drum bus with a 4:1 ratio. I like a slower attack and a faster release. Check it out. So for me, nothing really gives you that sound and that sustain quite like an 1176 does. It's super versatile, again, which is why I chose it in conjunction with using the Destresser. All right, so the last thing I have here for the world of compression / limiting is going to be a limiter. So I'm a big fan of the FabFilter Pro-L. I know that they currently have a newer model out right now, which is going to be the L2, and that's great. I've checked that out. Just haven't had a chance to pick it up yet. And I like to have a good limiter on hand, which for me is going to be really transparent. It's something that I like to use if I'm pushing my drum samples really hot or if I'm sending a lot of level into something. I will typically put this wherever wherever it is needed, and I like it to be really transparent. The thing that I like about the FabFilter in particular is that we have a whole bunch of different types of limiters down here. It's going to give you different sounds, transparent, dynamic, punchy, whatever floats your boat. And then we have all these great controls down here, so this is something that definitely works for me. Obviously right here, we're not doing any limiting, but again, if I need it, this is something that I will often reach for. All right, so speaking of drum samples, I cannot live and mix drums without my buddy Steven Slate's Trigger 2. I would call it the industry standard drum triggering plugin. Okay. Everybody probably has Trigger or probably has used it at some point. Look, the layout is great. The ease of use is wonderful and it gets the job done. So I am constantly using Trigger. If I am blending in samples with the original drum sounds, or if I'm completely replacing something, I am doing it with Trigger 2. So on these drums that I have set up right here, I've got a kick in, a kick out, a snare top, a snare bottom. I've got a rack tom, floor tom, ride cymbal, and then I've got an overhead, stereo overhead left and right, and there's a mono room mic. But what I've done is I went ahead and sort of how I often use Trigger for me is I will duplicate usually the kick in and the snare top. I'll fully duplicate them, pull them over here on their own tracks, and then I'll go ahead and I'll set up Trigger, and then I typically blend in a combination of 100% of the sample with 100% of the original acoustic drum. That's how I work. If you guys like to use the mix knob over here, there's no right and wrong way to do it. This is just something that I find to be extremely helpful. So let's take a listen to the kick and snare samples that I have going on here. This one is the kick. And this is a preset from the Blackbird bundle that Slate offers over on the website. It's great. Love the Blackbird pack. Got to check it out. So you can hear when I bypass my kick and snare samples there, we're getting 100% of all the acoustic drums. You know, and it's just something that is a staple in modern mixing, is using drum samples. I mean, it's so prevalent nowadays, and to stay relevant and to stay competitive, it's just something that is necessary when it comes to mixing drums. All right, guys, next up here, I don't even know what number I'm on. I'm just going to keep going. I think this is, we did 7th Heaven, we did the Destresser 1176 Slate Trigger, the limiter. So I guess this would be number 6. This is going to be Auto Align from the good folks at Sound Radix. I'm sure most of you are hip to Auto Align, and if you are not, you guys need to get hip quickly. This is a game changer. I don't really know any other plugin that does what this does. In the description below, I'm going to link to my overview/demo of Auto Align, where I go through it and I essentially show how I use it, what I consider the correct way to use it, or how to get the most out of it. And essentially, what Auto Align does in a nutshell is it will perfectly align the phase of your drums, really, or anything else that may be out of phase. So the whole idea is you pick a sample to sort of reference from. I typically like to start with it on one of my overheads, and then, for example, I will align my kick in to the overheads, my snare top to the overheads, my toms to the overheads, and any other cymbal mics. Now, the things I do not align to it is, for example, the room microphones, because the room mic is designed to give us a sense of depth and a sense of space. Now, if I were to use Auto Align on the room mic, it would pull that transient back, and it would essentially make our drums sound smaller. Now, some other things that I do is I will phase align the kick out to the kick in mic and the snare bottom to the snare top mic. So again, there's going to be a link below. Go check out my video on how to use Auto Align. This one is an absolute game changer. All right, we're going to talk about some EQs now that I personally cannot live without when mixing drums. And the first one up here is going to be the FabFilter Pro-Q2. Now, look, the point of this for me is that this is just a really, really good, transparent sounding parametric EQ. And the flexibility of this plugin is really astounding. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with the FabFilter stuff. They just make incredible tools. And I really, really like the Pro-Q2. This is my go-to parametric EQ on everything. So right now I've got this set up on the snare bus here, and I'm just doing a little bit of high-pass filtering, just taking out some of the boxiness in here. And, if there's something that I need to do in a subtractive manner, or if I need to get a little bit surgical with, this is going to be the EQ that I'm going to use. What I love about it is there's just so many different options in regards to curves that we can use here. Okay, we've got bell, we've got our shelves, we've got our filters, we've got a notch. It's got a tilt shelf, which is great, and then we can also solo bands. Check this out. This is really helpful. So what's great about that is it allows us to get very surgical if we need to. And what I like about this is if we want to boost using this EQ, it's really nice and transparent. No artifacts. FabFilter Pro-Q2 is a beast. Now, it was tough picking my next EQ, and I believe we're on number 8, but the EQ that I decided to pick was the Neve 1081. Now, look, you could choose any Neve EQ. All Neves are great, and the reason that I went with a Neve or an analog style EQ was because that's exactly what I like to reach for when I tend to use additive EQ. So whenever I'm boosting something, I will reach for a plugin like a Neve. Another thing that I'm very fond of is, the API EQs are great. The 550A, the 550B, the 560. I mean, look, Pultecs are great. There's so many great EQs out there. But the reason that I specifically went with the Neve 1081 is because we have an extra mid-band in here, okay? We also have added fixed frequency points going around all over the place, okay? We've got a high Q that we can engage as well as down here. And then up on the high shelf, we have extra frequency points as well. On a 1073, it's a fixed 12K shelf. So here we have the option 3.3, 4.7K, 6.9, 10, and 15. I just find it to be very helpful. I can also do some cutting in the mids with this if I choose to. I can get the kicks to sound really big. Let me show you what I mean. There's a couple things that I'll typically go for. Solo the kick. So if I bypass these two Neves that I have on the kick in and the kick out, let's go ahead and copy it over to the bus. Okay, so typically the whole idea of using a kick in and a kick out mic is to give us two different types of sounds for the kick. So with the kick in, I associate that a little bit more with the smack and the attack of the beater from the kick drum. Now the kick out mic is going to give us a lot more bottom end and a lot more oomph. So what's cool about the 1081, or even if you're using the 1073, is there's a couple things that you can do to really embellish either the attack or that bottom end, or a little bit of both. Let me show you what I mean. So I've soloed up the kick in and the kick out here. We've got a bunch of different filter points. So typically what I'll do, if I want more low end, I'll pick one of these high pass filter points. So I might do something like 47 here. And then what I'll do is I'll take advantage of this low shelf. So if I bring this up to something like 33 here, or over here in the 50s, watch what happens. So I'll leave that at 32, and then I'm just going to start boosting this and listen to the bottom end that comes in. Now, of course, you can choose different settings if you want. That was down in the 30s. Let's go up to the 50s, see how that sounds. Now, of course, I'm embellishing this just so you guys can hear it, but nonetheless, we certainly can add a whole lot of bottom. If I turn this off, go back to off. Now, let's just say we wanted to add some more smack to the beater or some more attack. I'll typically choose this mid-band right in here, and I find that something around 3.3, 3.9, or 4.7 is going to really give us a whole lot more attack. Check this out. We'll start on like 4.7. And it's very musical too. It's not like it sounds unusable by any means. If I want to take that a step further with the Neve, I'll typically throw this on the high shelf, and I'll try something like, in this case, maybe 10K, but the 12K works really nice on a 1073. Now, again, I've pushed this way more than I would use, but I just want to emphasize that it's there, and you can get all of these things out of the 1081 or out of the 1073, you know, if you wanted to. Again, you could even do both. You get some of the bottom and some of the top. Bring this back to where we had it. So, again, embellishing, but my point is there's a whole lot of sonic variety that we can get out of the Neve, and I just really love the way that it gives it all that analog sweetness that you're used to with that Neve sound. All right, guys, two more left here. One thing I think is crucial to have when mixing drums is a really great sounding transient shaper. And one that I really enjoy using is the multi-band transient shaper out of Neutron from iZotope. This thing's great. You can set this up in a different band, so you can affect certain different areas of the frequency spectrum in terms of what you want to enhance or decrease. But we're just going to use this one across the whole thing right now. I have this set on the snare drum, on the snare bus. Just put this back to 0. So there's basically two settings here. You've got attack and sustain. It can do a whole lot. What they do is they've added a sharp, medium, and a smooth sort of curvature to the transient shaper. So what we can get out of this is we can basically force a whole lot more attack and sustain out of our drums with this. Or we can go the other way and we can decrease it. For example, a reason you might want to decrease it is if you have like a real ringy tom or a real ringy snare. Say that 5 times fast, real ringy. And you want to go the other way and just kind of make it sound a little bit more muted. You can do that. It's really cool though. We'll do this in context. Now, bear in mind, I'm just exaggerating this so you guys can really hear it. This isn't where I typically keep it, but we can really get a whole lot of aggressiveness out of the transient shaper. So it's just a very handy tool that I find to be advantageous on specific drums like your kick, your snare. Sometimes it's great on toms. It's just what the toms need to punch through. I typically do not use this on the overheads of the room, but never say never, because there's always a certain situation that something might be good for. So anyway, if you guys are into transient shapers, check out the one from Neutron from iZotope. I really dig it. All right, coming in at number 10, last but surely not least on this list, is going to be a really good tape saturation plugin. And for me, I love the Slate Digital Virtual Tape Machine. What I dig about this is that we have a lot of great options and it's very simple to use. So if we look over here, one thing for me that's really important is we have the ability to go between a 2-inch tape and a 1/2-inch tape. Now, what do I like to do and why, and what's the difference? Well, a different size tape is going to sound different, just as running it at different tape speeds, 15 inches per second or 30 inches per second is going to be a much more sort of hi-fi or lo-fi sound, okay? Right now I have it set up to a 1/2-inch, 15 inches per second on the FG456 tape type. Let's just take a quick listen. This is on the drum bus. So I kind of like a 15 IPS on this particular application, but what's cool is this 1/2-inch and 2-inch. Now, I will typically use the 2-inch if I have this on an instrument. So if I wanted to put this on a kick or on a snare, I would go with the 2-inch because it's a little bit warmer and fatter. I typically go with the 1/2-inch if I have this on a bus or my mix bus, because 1/2-inch tape is typically used for mixing down, in the analog domain when you're working with tape. So that's, why I have it set up to a 1/2-inch if it was going to be on my drum bus or on my mix bus. Now, the other thing that I really like about the Slate Digital Tape Machine is that it adds sort of an analog intangible to the sound of your drums that you're really only going to get with analog gear. They go through a lot of effort to model the tubes, the transformers, all of the stuff inside the boxes, which makes analog sound so sweet. All right, guys, so in summation, in no particular order, we had the Seventh Heaven Reverb from Liquid Sonics, we had the UAD Distressor, the UAD 1176 Rev A Blue Stripe, the Transient Shaper from Neutron, from iZotope, of course. We had the FabFilter Pro-L limiter, the FabFilter Pro-Q2. We had Steven Slate's Trigger 2, Auto Align from Sound Radix, the Neve 1081 or the Neve 1073, and of course we had the virtual tape machine from Slate Digital. As always, guys, I just want to say thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. Make sure you guys head on over to learningtomix.com. There'll be a link in the description. Make sure you take advantage of our free 14-day trial. We've got premium tutorials, premium multi-track sessions, all kinds of goodies in there. You can get absolutely free when you go take the trial. Also, make sure you grab your free audio swag bag with all kinds of goodies in it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.
What's up? This is Steven Slate, and you are watching Mix Better Now.